To trade or not to trade? That is the question. If Brian Burns is the West and Abdul Carter is the East, then Kayvon Thibedaux is the Sun. I don't know where I was going with that reference to some Shakespearean plays that weren't even all the same ones. So all over the place with that to start. But what I want to talk about in today's video is what the Giants should do with Kayvon Thibedaux moving into this offseason, especially about a time that has a lot of rumors, pre-draft, post-draft rumors, what they should do with him. They're not going to extend him. So does a trade make sense, or what the Giants should do here? But first, I do want to touch on, the background on Kayvon Thibedaux, where he is today, why they would trade him, and then anything that really makes sense in that regard. So where I want to get started here is just talking about his seasons that he's had to date. He was drafted going into the 2022 season, and a pretty productive rookie campaign by all measures, right? The Giants had a successful go about. They got to their first playoff. They had their first playoff win against the Vikings. It was kind of like the Garden was Eden for a brief moment, but there were still holes on that team as they did go 9-7-1. But let's just talk about Thibodeaux specifically in this video. His rookie year, he had 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. And then in 2023, he had his best season with 11.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 1 fumble recovery. It's kind of hard to imagine. I feel like the last 2 seasons, he hasn't really done too much, but in those games, in that season in 2023, he played at 17 games. And then the last 2 seasons, he's missed a pretty large chunk of time with playing in 12 games in 2024 and 10 last season. And the sack total has decreased since, with 5.5 in 2024 and 2.5 last season. 1 forced fumble in 2024, but no fumble recoveries or forced fumbles the last 2 seasons. So he was a guy who was drafted very high, 5th overall in that draft, and there was a lot of hype for him coming out of college. We all remember it well. We spoke about it on this channel. I was pretty pumped about it when it happened, and let's talk about a couple of reasons for why we're at this crossroad of why a trade might happen. And I think the biggest reason for this for Kayvon Thibedaux is that he was drafted so high, and the reason why his name is being thrown around for potential trades is because he hasn't really played to that absolute ceiling of being a Pro Bowler, being an All-Star that we drafted him to be. And he's not making this, decision very easy for himself, because now we're getting to the time where you're getting towards having to pay guys. And I'm not quite sure he warrants a large payday and maybe even a medium-sized payday, which is bringing him back next season, is why a trade will probably happen this offseason, even though Joe Shane can say they don't want to trade him because they want as many pass rushers as possible. And also you have a sick, edge rushing scenario with Burns and Abdul Carter and Kayvon. But my point is that he's making this situation for this trade easier to talk about because he hasn't played to that consistently great level that he was drafted to do. I wish he had. I bought his jersey. I have so many Kayvon Thibedaux rookie cards that I'm probably going to have to part ways with. But more importantly, I wanted him to be the player that I thought he was capable of pre-draft. And to finish talking about his career to this point, there are highs, there are lows, and there's so much just, I don't know if the word's inconsistency, or I guess if I had to rate him so far, I'd probably put him at a C+, B- player, because there are some games where you're like, wow, he's finally here. We've seen him show up. He had 3 sacks against the Commanders, and then he goes missing for 4 or 5 weeks, and you're like, what happened? Is that guy playing? You don't hear his name, you don't see his number. You're like, what happened? And for someone who's drafted so high, just a bust of a draft with Neal too. But I'm not saying Thibodeaux is a bust. He could be productive and he's still young. And he gets a lot of credit for being this freak athlete, but he's not the guy that the Giants drafted him to be at 5 overall. So let's talk about the most likely outcome. And I think this outcome is way more tenable than paying him an extension long-term, because you're going to have to start paying a lot of guys on this team, especially the young guys who came from the NIL era and are pretty cocky, that are on podcasts all the time talking about how they're going to get theirs. Now, And you're already paying Burns a significant chunk. Dexter Lawrence is getting $27 million this season. Abdul will eventually get his day, and then there's just not enough money to go around. So let's talk about why the trade and why now. Immediately, the Giants have so many holes in this roster to fill in terms of the secondary. They need to upgrade their middle linebacker. They're probably cutting Bobby Okereke in the coming days. They need to find a linebacker. And trading Thibodeaux right now would free up about $15 million in cap space. So, according to Dan Graziano of ESPN, it seems more than likely that the Giants will try to find a trade partner for Kayvon Thibedaux rather than extending him. This question is whether the Giants can find a taker for him at that salary in a deep offseason edge rusher market, but the chatter at the combine indicates they're going to try, Graziano reported. This comes after Joe Shane said at the combine presser on Tuesday, right now, Kayvon's got to be with us. He can't have enough pass rushers. So to that extent, I agree. You know, when the Giants have been winning Super Bowls, they have multiple guys. They have Strahan, Tuck, OC, Kiwanuka, great guys that could get to the quarterback, and you can't have enough of them. But I think with the market, you know, after this season, I just don't want to see another guy leave the team and go for nothing, because keeping Kayvon around for a season, say he plays really good in a contract year, which a lot of guys tend to do. They play in every single game. They have their best season. Wan'Dale Robinson just did it, right? Because they need to set up their families and their kids after them for a significant payday. And if he balls out this season, then you have to pay him, or he's going to walk for nothing. And you're kind of like, well, look at what happened with Saquon. Should have got rid of him. But right now, the market for Kayvon Thibedaux, is reported by Jordan Renan, is that it's a late 2 or early day 3 pick. So you're not going to get much back for him. You're not going to get, I'm not saying you should be getting a first round like Micah Parsons or Quinnen Williams or anything along those lines. But, you know, multiple sources have told ESPN and other outlets that Thibodeaux is expected to fetch a late day 2 or early day 3 pick. So essentially, you're going to be moving Kayvon Thibedaux for money, for salary cap, freedom to plug holes on your team elsewhere. And it kind of sucks it got to this point, but Kayvon really doesn't have anyone really to blame but himself, because we wanted him to put up 11.5 sacks a season. It would make this decision much easier to keep him long term, to not have invested in Abdul Carter this previous draft and gotten someone else that could have helped at, I don't know, wide receiver, tackle, anywhere else. You know what I mean? So, but it is what it is. I think there are just too many holes on this team that have to be filled in such a short period of time, that if you're going to take this $15 million that you might get from a trade, then I want to see it be put to good use. I want to see the right tackle re-signed. I want to see a potential wide receiver come in that can be on the fringe of a 1, definitely a wide receiver 2 capability, because you're losing Wan'Dale. You're not going to have that. And, the holes that need to be filled here. So anyway, that's my whole spiel on Kayvon Thibedaux. I wish it didn't come to this, honestly, because I do like him. Even if he wears his funny pregame outfits where he's got like the huge Pharrell hat and is dressed like a WWF wrestler, because he seems like a decent guy. So that's all I got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm going to be talking a lot more this week, so if you like it, drop a like, comment, subscribe, and come back for more. And have a great day, y'all.